Probably Riverside Trail. No. Do you want me to? Folks, we're going to go ahead and get started. If you don't mind taking your seats, please. Thank you. Sorry we're running a few minutes late, but I will call this May 6th, 2024, the Whitefish City Council to order. Thanks everyone for attending tonight. We do have some folks on remotely via Teams, so welcome to them as well. We will start with our Pledge of Allegiance, and I think I saw Diane Conradi in the audience. Would you mind leading us, please? We do have a community presentation regarding Mountain Climber, and it's a commuter services proposal. Who's handling this one, Dana? Oh, thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Transportation. Should I adjust this a little bit? Is that better? There we go.
That's great. Yep.
All right, so good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Elizabeth Wood, and I am the director from Mountain Climber Public Transportation from Flathead County. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to quickly come in. I'll try to breeze through this really quick. I am very grateful that you guys have given me the opportunity to come speak to you this evening. So quickly, I just want to give you a quick cap on our current services that we are providing within Whitefish. So we currently have what I would consider one commuter trip that makes its way over in the morning. It's that driver that actually operates here in Whitefish that makes a trip over. So they leave Kalispell at 9, get here at 4. Then we have that driver and an additional driver that does operate during the day here in Whitefish. That service is what we call an on-demand service or a microtransit service. We have an app for that in which riders are able to book their rides on the app and or call our dispatchers. Currently, a lot of our riders and clients in Whitefish are seniors, so we are getting a lot of them around. We do have a lot of younger workers that are starting to ride seasonally as well. So that makes up the bulk of our ridership here. We're here basically starting at 9:30 until about 4 is when we're heading back. The second driver splits town around 2:45, so isn't here the entire day. We kind of share that driver. They go over to Columbia Falls and finish up. So last year, I would say in August, we reintroduced our fares, which was $1 each way. So it's still a very affordable ride. Prior to that, we were providing about 625 up to 700 rides a month, which may or may not sound like a lot, but it actually is quite a bit. It keeps those drivers hopping, especially here in Whitefish, because the traffic is a little bit challenging at times. I would say that since we've reintroduced that fare, we have seen a decrease in that, and we were kind of hoping for that. One comment I've had a lot is, well, I didn't know we even had this service in Whitefish. And it's hard to publicize a service that is maxed out at capacity, because the last thing we want is for riders to be dissatisfied with the service and never be able to get a ride booked. So we did see that decrease. We're seeing that folks are booking the rides maybe when they need them rather than just going 3 or 4 times a day. So we have some more availability, which is great because we'll be able to start putting the word out about this service. We are in the middle of a proposed expansion, and that's why I'm here this evening. Our goal is to put our commuter service back in place. This commuter service would hit our 3 main cities, so it would connect our Kalispell, Whitefish, and Columbia Falls. Potentially, and I think we're going to be a little heavier than potentially on this. This should happen probably either way. Our goal is to open up Columbia Falls and Whitefish zone. So currently we have a driver that operates in Columbia Falls and they just stay there. We have the drivers that operate here in Whitefish and they just stay here. But regardless of whether or not I can get this commuter passed with the commissioners, my goal is to open up that and make it one big zone, Whitefish and Columbia Falls, which I think makes sense. I feel like we have workers in Columbia Falls that need to get to Whitefish, medical appointments, maybe over to Logan Health. But then the bigger picture outside of that is to just get this commuter back in place to where we can get them wherever they need to go within the three cities. So this commuter is also referred to as an intercity run or a tri-city commuter. This will have scheduled times. So the commuter, if put in place, will have scheduled pickups along the way between the three cities. Additionally, and this is good news for Whitefish, this will hit Glacier International Airport. So the additional fundings that we are getting for this through the state, which are our federal funds that are passed through, these are intercity connecting funds, and it's going to be a pilot program initially. Those funds, some of the criteria for this is that we would connect to other modes of transportation. So therefore, connecting to Glacier International Airport as well as Amtrak here in town. So those will be key points in us being able to get this funding that the state is ready to send our way. The fare will likely be $1 each way. There is a potential from the airport that there may be a slight increase in the fare. That's to be determined. Operating times would operate along lines of most commuters in most cities. So you're going to start around 6 o'clock, go until probably about 10:30, 11. You have to have that gap in the middle of the day, shut it down in order for it to be considered a commuter rather than a fixed route. And then it would open back up in like 2:30 and then run into the evening. So early and late shifts at the airport or flights, probably not. So it's not going to necessarily work with everything out of the airport, but as you know, we definitely have an issue with transportation to and from the airport to get them to any city, particularly Whitefish. So moving on to the cost for the current service that we're providing. So if you break this down, transportation is just not cheap, any way you slice it. So currently for the services that we are providing in Whitefish, the total cost is about $262,000. Montana Department of Transportation pays towards that about $142,000. I would say that money, again, is state, federal, or is federal funds that is funneled through the state. The county is paying about $111,000 at this point, and Whitefish has been giving us $9,200 for a good handful of years. So that kind of breaks down the cost for the service that we're providing currently and where we get the funds for that. So the commuter cost to put this in place is $560,000. This is where we're asking for 4 drivers basically to put this in place. Some of you might recall we had a commuter service previously, but it wasn't the most user-friendly for one, the times. We only had one driver that operated it, and if you were trying to get from Columbia Falls to Kalispell or Kalispell to Whitefish, it sometimes took a while because it's just this big old pyramid. So our plan is to put 2 drivers in place at the same time. So 2 drivers operating in the morning shift, 2 in the evening shift or afternoon, to where our times are going to be a lot more connective and friendly. And user-friendly. Another thing was we didn't have advertising going very much for that prior to. People just didn't know it existed, but we're ready to just blast this if we can get it put in place. So out of that $560,000 for the 4 drivers, 2 of those full-time positions would be solely just for the commuter. The reason why we're going for 4 is twofold here. One, we won't have to do split shifts on those drivers, which is a key point. Trying to find a driver that wants to come in and work early morning and then leave for a big bulk of the day and then come back is not an easy find. So it would be 4 drivers. They would start off with on demand and then move into, or excuse me, they'd start off with commuter and move into on-demand service, which would enable us to add another driver also to our Columbia Falls and Whitefish on demand to help them get around, expand those hours to where they might have some pickups a little earlier and a little later in the day. So breaking that down, the local match we would need to supply this is $247,000. So for every federal dollar we get, we have a certain match percentage we have to put in. So when we break that down, we're needing about $247,000 to add this service. My ask to Whitefish is pretty up there. I'm looking for $60,000 is what I'm asking, which I know is a lot, but I feel like the benefit far outweighs the $60,000 that we could provide you by putting this service in place. So this may not pass. So to give you just a quick idea here what I'm up against. So I'm collecting stories. I'm collecting testimonials from personal people, individuals, businesses, letters of support. And I've had several come in from Whitefish already. I take this before the commissioners next Monday, a week from today. And basically what I'm asking from the county is to levy my entire mill. So for the last several years, we've operated a pretty tight ship with our transportation in the valley, and our taxes honestly weren't, you know how this is working, they're starting to go up. That value is going up. So I am asking them to levy the entire mill, which will be around $500,000. But I'm still coming in short to get this put in place. So I will need support from my other communities, and I will be reaching out to Columbia Falls and Kalispell as well, to hopefully get some funds increased from them. But that extra financial support is going to be huge. I don't see me being able to pass it without it. That is basically my presentation. Do you have any questions?
Giuseppe?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, Elizabeth, thank you for coming and presenting and daring. Question is, you mentioned in your presentation that you have demand, but you cannot provide the supply. So if, and I'm speaking for myself, not for everybody, if Whitefish provided you $500,000 a year, what would you be able to provide?
That would obviously, if, yeah, I'll take $500,000. If I had this is all just, let's just say. Well, to answer the question with $500,000, that's pretty substantial, and that would all be local match. So that's the key here. Anytime we're looking for funds, we're looking for local match money that we can take and put towards the bigger pot. So, for instance, federally for operations, we get reimbursed about 0.54% on the dollar for operations. And then for admin, we get a little bit more. We get 80%, but our biggest bulk of expenses is through operating expenses. So you can imagine, you multiply that out, you're gonna end up with a pretty substantial amount of money that you could potentially provide.
Yes, but what is the demand that today you're not able to? Is it 3 buses a day? Is it 5 drivers? I mean, with your proposed solution, how much of that demand you think you can fulfill, and how much is not going to be fulfilled? Because transportability, people in Columbia Falls coming to work here, all of a sudden translates in affordability.
Yes.
Right? So that's where the balance needs to be.
Absolutely. So what we would be able to provide with the $60,000 or whatever you guys are able to contribute towards that $60,000, we won't go $500,000, but it's going to be huge in my opinion, because the connecting, I know that an issue that you are having here in Whitefish is getting the workers that maybe live in other towns to come to your town and work that can't afford to live here in Whitefish. This will help with that immensely. And then also we get a lot of calls for folks from Whitefish that are students trying to get to the college. We're seeing a real decrease in folks that are actually getting their driver's license. I got it at age 14, but not everybody's as ambitious these days. So students getting to the college, as well as folks that are needing to get to medical appointments. So the work, medical, and students are our big things that we'll be able to connect. And that doesn't even touch on tourism for you guys. I know that's huge for you guys, tourism, and this will be connecting to the airport. It's not ideal for all flights, but it will connect to a lot of them, so.
Further questions for Elizabeth? Ben?
You mentioned pilot program. How long is this pilot program?
Good question. The state definitely has these funds sitting there, and not every community is ideal to put this intercity connecting in place. They really want to put these funds to us. And I would say that probably for most pilot programs, particularly for commuter, you need to give it a good solid 2 or 3 years. I don't see them yanking that from us for a good solid, probably 3 years. And I am absolutely certain that we can show that it's definitely a good use of our resources.
So are you asking for the $60,000 per year for 3 years?
Yes, yes.
And you believe the matching funds will be there for that period of time?
So that 60,000 is going towards my matching. So my my county mill and the already existing donations that I get from the cities, Kalispell, Columbia Falls, and Whitefish, are already going towards those match. Logan Health also gives us a nice substantial little chunk. They give us 25,000. But so this fund that you guys would approve would actually go towards my match, which I am short at this point. So without the extra support, I will not be able to put it in place.
Sure. And can you come back in a year or two and give us some numbers about what you're seeing and
Absolutely.
Cost per ride and cost per passenger? And those kinds of
Yes,
things?
I would be happy to come back to any of your meetings, quarterly, yearly, whatever you want.
Thank you.
Further questions? I have a suggestion here in 1 second. I had 2 questions, if you don't mind. What are our neighboring cities contributing annually now, and what are their asks?
Okay, so currently, you saw what you folks are providing. Kalispell's providing 15,000, and Columbia Falls provides, I believe it's 6,200.
Okay.
So those are the current figures that we've been receiving yearly for quite a few years. And even if we don't get this passed, a little increase would be nice. If I don't get it passed, it'll just show the investment from the cities. Currently, all of our service is provided in the cities, but the county is putting up, we have a voted mill for it. So yeah, a little more support would go a long way with this. And so I'm hopeful that I'm just going to go to my meeting on Monday and state that Whitefish is considering a financial contribution, an additional financial contribution.
So it's the 9,200 plus 60.
Just 60 total would be good.
60 total.
I would take 60. Yes.
Frank?
I'm going to follow up on John's question. What are our neighboring cities going to be asked to contribute in addition to what they're contributing now?
Yes, so I will go in and ask them for the 60,000. Does that mean I'm gonna get it? No. I mean, if I'm being real here, I really don't see Columbia Falls being able to put this out for us. I know they're starting to get a little bit of momentum going. I'm just saying you guys are doing a good job with your resort tax. Kalispell, we'll see. I put you guys first on the list because I know you guys believe in public transportation, and you do see the value in it. And I do believe when you're breaking down the cities, Whitefish probably has the most to gain from this. When you're breaking it down to the individuals in each community has the most to gain from it. Individuals in every community can benefit from this, but I feel like Whitefish is going to benefit probably the most from it.
Rebecca?
I think it's fantastic. And it's actually been one of our long-term goals for a long time to look at inner-city transportation. I just have a question kind of for Dana, like, can we afford 60,000 and which fund would it come from for 3 years?
It's always a fun question to answer. Because this is an ongoing cost. You know, we have reserves right now. You could fund the first year with reserves, but you would have to look at some type of tax increase to have it be an ongoing annual cost. We don't, we're not, we're spending down cash balance in the FY25 proposed budget. So what I would say is, $60,000, estimating where we're at for a mill is about, with the budget, I'm estimating it to be about $82,000. It's not quite 1 mil. 1 mil is less than 1% increase on a tax bill, likely. So, we can do those calculations. We'll have our budget work sessions coming up at the end of May and in June. I could run those figures for you and provide that. But again, it just depends on the, if the commitment's an ongoing commitment, we have to be prepared that it goes past the pilot stage.
Steve?
Yeah.
What does 1 mil translate into on a tax bill?
I'd have to calculate that for you to get it exactly.
Ballpark, what's our median home price is
If you
700,000?
give me 1 second. You want to hand me your budget book? I actually gave her one of the sheets that calculated what mills are.
We can
right
come
now.
back to you, I think.
Well,
For your meeting next Monday,
Yes.
I wish we had had this information a month ago. So we
Yes,
could have
I-
evaluated the finances, but I understand. Is it okay if you just go into the commissioners meeting with a tentative, strong yes?
Yes, it
but
is. I
It'll just
mean,
provide our city attorney some time to do the actual
Yeah.
math.
yeah,
And that would be my
absolutely.
suggestion to the council. City manager, excuse me.
she can do it. That's fine. She can do it.
And
But she
Would
has
would that be adequate?
it would, and if, I'm gonna be honest, if you guys need to go 40 instead of 60, and that's a nice half mil,
Okay,
that would work too.
okay.
Yeah.
So Steve, to answer your question, it's going to be under $10, but probably around $9 a year is what I would estimate it at.
Giuseppe?
That's for a property, because you have to understand the property value. That would be a property valued about $675,000, which is a pretty standard average home, even though I know our market rates look a lot different. That's pretty average.
Thanks, Dana.
Mr. Mayor, is it time for a motion?
Please.
I would like to move for the council to approve direction to the staff to commit $60,000 a year to the project that you just described.
Out of which fund?
I would start from the general fund, but I would like to talk to my motion in a second.
Okay. Is there a second to the motion? Seconded by Councilor Quinnell Giuseppe.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. And this is a discussion I brought to the council previously, but I've been doing some calculations, and I've been studying the data from the Institute for Tourism and Recreation out of the University of Montana, and data that has been presented to us during the budget plan by the Whitefish Convention Visitor Bureau. In 2023, the Whitefish non-resident visitors were 1,450,000. Of those 1,450,000, 500,000 visitors spent one or more than a night in Whitefish. So we had 500,000 visitors who came through Whitefish. Now, of those people, I do not have the percentage, but a large number, or maybe half of them, drove. And they drove from, and this is the data from Explore Whitefish, from Spokane, Coeur d'Alene, British Columbia, some even from Seattle, and again, in fall from Coeur d'Alene, Spokane, and Missoula. Now, Coeur d'Alene, Spokane, British Columbia are not Montana plated. So what's my point? My point is, out of the 500,000 people that come through Whitefish in a year and spend at least one night, if we found a way to charge them for parking tickets at an average of $5 for the whole state each, only 1/5, it's 100,000 cars, times $5 is $500,000 of revenue that we could be collecting in a non-very discriminatory way, because we would charge only non-Montana plated cars, and you have the 500,000 that I like to provide to transportability and affordability.
Thank you, Giuseppe. Further comments on the motion? Ben?
I would just make one quick comment. I like what I'm hearing. I really appreciate the initiative that's being taken here, and especially with these matching funds, I think that's an opportune time to do it. So I do intend to support this, but I just would also make an observation that it is a pilot. I get that. But the effectiveness of the use of the money is also important. So I am hesitant to commit in perpetuity forever that we're going to pay $60,000 a year until we have a better understanding of how many people are using it and what is the effectiveness of the money. So I hope that, I think we should support it now, but I hope we continue to evaluate the growth of this on a go-forward basis. And so, thank you.
Thank you, Ben.
Just
Quickly,
on the motion, I was okay for 1 year from the general fund. So
implied with
we're
your
on the
motion?
same page, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. All those in favor, please raise your,
One second.
excuse me, Dana?
So you probably could have voted on the motion, but I'd like it clarified for staff, if the 60,000 is regardless of approval of the commuter bus. So if the commuter is not approved on May 13th, are we staying at the 90, I think we had 9,300, not 92, but I could be wrong, might be 92, but our current rate? So-
Correct.
Okay.
That's my understanding. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that motion carries unanimously. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much.
your time tonight.
Thank you for your time. And if I may, I just want to introduce Jaden Weppel right there. He is our Transportation Advisory Committee Chair, and he's been going to bat for me as well and work in the community. And if you see him emailing you or calling, he's our TAC Chair. He's legit. So thank you for your time.
Nice to meet you, Jana. Thanks. We'll move on to communications from the public. We do have 3 public hearing advertised for this evening, including the Riverbend Trail public hearing. So if you're here to speak to one of those public hearings, please wait till I call those items. Otherwise, anything to bring to the attention of the council, now's your opportunity. Name and address for the record, please.
Daniel Sitter with Housing Whitefish. Mayor, Council, I'm providing an update on the Workforce Assistance Program, which you all have provided funding for. We had 37 applications for our first quarter of applications. 17 of those were approved. Of those 20 that were not approved, they either already paid less than 30% of their income towards rent. There's a couple couples that applied together or separately that should have been a household. And then there's about 7 that we gave maybes to. They were currently living outside of Whitefish, the zip code. And so we said, hey, if you have a lease within 30 days, we'll still honor that award. So we had, 17 of those applications. So over the next 12 months for those 17, we'll be dispersing $64,620, which is about $5,385 per month, going towards those qualified applicants and their housing needs. We did collect quite a bit of data just through the applications and just some interesting things that wanted to share with you all. So on average, we're going to be paying about $317 per applicant, and that's going directly to the landlords. We had all of the landlords sign our agreement. So thank you to all those participating landlords. 59% of the applicants expressed that they're at risk of moving from Flathead County due to lack of affordability or inability to pay rent. There were 14 single parents that applied for assistance. The average rent reported by applicants was $1,413.61. Only 8 of the applicants had utilities included in that rent price. Women were 62% of the total applicant pool. Average age was 36 years old. And on average, applicants reported moving 1.5 times in the last 3 years. So we just opened up the second round of applications on May 1st. So we will be accepting applications until June 15th. So anybody is welcome to apply for that program. Housingwhitefish.org has all the qualifications and criteria. And then we'll also be accepting applications again in September and December. So that is just a little update on the program and how it's going.
Good news. Sounds like it's working.
Yep.
Thanks, Daniel.
Yeah, thank you.
Further communications from the public? Karen?
Hi, Karen Hilding and 1016 Creekview Drive, and I wanted to speak in support of the mountain climber. So for the last couple of years, I have served as a city representative to the county's Transportation Advisory Committee, And I think Elizabeth has been doing a great job directing the mountain climber. I think it's a very tough job. They have a very small staff, and it's not easy to find bus drivers and all that these days. So, yeah, we are. Part of my support also comes from being serving on the Climate Action Plan Committee, and you know, that I've been serving on for several years. It's one of the goals of that committee to have better transit available in the valley and within the city. We recently helped out with an emissions profile for the Flathead Valley that showed that the majority of greenhouse gas emissions appear to come from transportation in the valley. That's the main source. If you want to deal with greenhouse gas pollutants in the valley, you need to deal with transportation. Of course, it's becoming more electrified, so that will reduce emissions. But at the same time, transit is something that helps so many people. Not everybody can afford a car, of course, and so it helps equalize things. And because of affordable housing being such a key issue, it connects some of this affordable housing to our downtown. Some that's not, you know, if we can't have everyone living within a walkable distance of downtown. So, yeah, I just wanted to, thank you guys for voting to approve this first increase in funding for this, as Elizabeth goes to the county commissioners to expand and do this pilot commuter service. I think it would be a huge benefit to everyone, and especially I think a bus service to the airport would be huge. When we looked at, we can tell through it's called streetlight data where most of the vehicles in the valley that go to the airport, where most of them are coming from, and they're mostly coming to and from Whitefish. And now that the airport has expanded, parking is more expensive out there. It's really great to have some alternatives. So thanks a lot.
Thanks, Karen. Further comments from the public tonight? Sure. Yep.
As Elizabeth already mentioned earlier, my name is Jaden Weppel. I am the chairman of the Flathead County Transportation Advisory Committee. And I just want to say thank you all for your support, or your tentative support of this transportation commuter plan. I think that it has immense benefit both to the Flathead Valley specifically, to the Flathead Valley more broadly, but to Whitefish specifically. And I just wanted to point out a couple things from your guys' transportation plan that was approved in 2022, just to sort of mention that and sort of leave it at that. And on page 152, you note that a series of transit systems needs have been identified by the city of Whitefish and local stakeholders, and that transit was identified as a priority in the Climate Action Plan, as Karin has mentioned previously. And then following 2 pages later on 154, it is critical that transit planning and funding be approached jointly by the cities, the county, the business community to ensure a coordinated, integrated, and finally, a sufficiently funded system. So I'd just like to leave you with that, and thank you.
Thanks very much. Who's next? Further public comment, please line up and feel free.
Joe Courtney, 535 Colorado Avenue. I was just wondering about small towns paying for counselors and benefits and
This is
medical.
advertised for a public hearing, Joe, so you'll
And-
have to wait till I call that hearing.
What, this is in general? It's not, I'm not,
Well, it's on our agenda this evening, so it is specific to this
what is
item.
it on your agenda? Talking about small
Compensation.
towns?
Compensation for city council.
Oh, yeah, I'm just talking about a small town. I did not use the word Whitefish, okay? And so I know that in some communities, there are a lot of volunteers that volunteer a lot of their time for various organizations in that town and put in hundreds and hundreds of hours during a month. And compared to some city councils, I doubt that they even come close to matching what volunteers, unpaid volunteers, put in. And if people are running for city council, especially incumbents, I would think that they should even inform the public that they might want to get paid, you know. And I'm not sure that would help them get elected or not, but that should have been brought up if somebody was in a small town running for city council. Most city councils, city staff does most of the work anyways. Basically, a council just reads reports, you know, asks people comments and questions, but they don't do a lot of the work. A lot of the work, in fact, even more in a lot of towns, is getting doled out to consultants and specialists, and you know, using taxpayers' money to make decisions on things instead of the city council actually doing that. So, which maybe not a bad idea, but it does cost the taxpayers a lot more money. And so, how much time a city council actually puts in, is it really worth the cost of paying them? Thank you.
Take a strong exception to your comment that those sitting up here this evening don't put in a lot of time. A lot of the time is put in outside of these regular meetings, so they do put in a lot of time. So thank you very much. Who's next? Further public comments? Michelle, anyone online?
Not for this agenda item.
Okay. Any public volunteer board reports from the audience tonight? Michelle, anyone online? No. Okay. Rebecca.
We had an Arbor Day planting at the skate park. So the ag group from the high school came out and planted 4 trees, 2 honey locusts and 2 that I don't remember. I don't know if Maria remembers, but it's really nice to be a Tree City, USA. So.
Thanks, Rebecca. Further board reports from the council? Not seeing any. You do have the consent agenda from April 15th enclosed in the packet. Any comments, edits, additions, or can I have a motion, please?
Would move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
I will second it.
Seconded by Giuseppe. Further comments? All
Just
those in-
make sure we saw that nice track nicely, right?
All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that passes unanimously. Michelle, which does bring us to our 3 public hearings this evening. We'll start with item 7A, a request from JLA Whitefish LLC for a conditional use permit to develop 21 apartments on .54 acres located at 7 and 23 Iowa Avenue, and the property is zoned WR4, which is our high-density multifamily residential district. Luke, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As mentioned before you tonight is the Iowa Ave 7 and 23 Iowa Ave multifamily project. This is a 21-unit multifamily building on 2 lots totaling .54 acres for a total of 38.89 dwelling units per acre along Edgewood Place and Iowa Ave. Edgewood Place is along the south of the project and Iowa Ave to the west. Both streets obviously are existing public streets. However, sidewalks and boulevards only exist along Edgewood Place at this time. The applicant is proposing frontage improvements along Iowa Ave, including a curb, gutter, boulevard, street trees, and a sidewalk. Included with the project is a parking lot of 26 spaces provided to the east and north of the building with 2 driveway approaches on Iowa Avenue and Edgewood Place. A total of 12 studio units, 3 one-bedroom units, and 6 two-bedroom units are proposed to be provided with this project. And this project is participating in our voluntary Legacy Home Incentive Program. As a part of that program, they are getting an increased density allowance of 20%, an increased building height of 5 feet, so now a maximum height of 40 feet, and a reduced parking allowance, 20% lower for at least, or for anything 2-bedroom or higher. As mentioned, the site is currently undeveloped and zoned WR4, which is the high-density multifamily residential district, generally surrounded by residential uses in all directions with the exception of south. To the south is the existing BNSF railway and county industrial zoning.
The growth policy does designate this property as high-density residential, which corresponds to WR4 zoning. The site is already well-served with utilities and staff has no concerns. Notice was mailed to adjacent landowners within 300 feet of the subject parcel and emailed to the proper advisory agencies back in March, and a sign has been posted on the property since early April, as well as being noticed in the Whitefish pilot. As of the writing of the staff report, no public comment had been received. However, 3 letters were subsequently received and are included in your packet. With that, I will quickly review the findings of fact. Finding number 1, the proposed use complies with the growth policy because it is WR4, which is consistent with the high-density residential designation in the Whitefish growth policy. Finding number 2, this project complies with the setbacks as proposed and will be confirmed again at time of building permit. The parking requirements require 1 space per studio or efficiency unit, 1.5 spaces per 1 bedroom, and 2 spaces per 2-bedroom unit or larger, unless reduced through the voluntary participation in the Legacy Homes program for those 2-bedroom units. Sufficient parking is provided, including ADA spaces, and staff has no concerns. Height is normally maxed out at 35 feet. However, again, with participation in Legacy Homes program, that can be increased by 5 feet. This new standard of 40 feet appears to be met and will be confirmed again at time of building permit. And similarly, lot coverage is maxed out at 40%, and this does appear to be met and will be confirmed again. With that, finding number 2, the project complies with the zoning regulations because all zoning standards are being met and will be met with conditions of approval or confirmed at time of building permit. Finding number 3, this project is suitable for the site because there is adequate land area for the project, access is adequate, and will meet emergency standards and does not contain any significant environmental constraints. Finding number 4, the site plan for the proposed use has effectively dealt with the design issues. It has addressed issues around parking and traffic circulation, and any further details in terms of signage and a detailed landscape plan will be reviewed further. Finding number 5, public facilities and services are available and adequate to serve the development. Municipal water and sewer are present. Response times for police and fire are not anticipated to be significantly affected, and frontage improvements will be made to Iowa Avenue. I will also note a fee for an existing street tree on Iowa Avenue will be collected as a fee in lieu of the tree removal by the Parks Department. I'll speak to that as a condition in just a second. In finding number 6, the proposed development has considered the neighborhood and community impact because traffic impacts can be handled by existing roads and no negative impacts in terms of dust, noise, smoke, odor, or any environmental nuisances are expected. Finally, finding number 7, this project is compatible with the neighborhood and community because the applicant considered the location of the new buildings in relationship to the neighboring buildings, and the scale and mass of this proposed structure will not overwhelm the neighborhood. With that, I will quickly highlight there are 7 conditions of approval, most of which are very standard for this type of development. I will call your attention to finding 6D, specifically speaking to the Legacy Homes incentive program, that this project is needing 2.1 units provided for either rental ownership or a fee in lieu, or a combination must be provided either with a recorded deed restriction, payment in consultation with the City and Whitefish Housing Authority. At this time, the applicant has submitted a housing mitigation plan with the project indicating that they are choosing to pay the fee in lieu, which as of today's date is $618,132.90. Finding 6E, this is the public boulevard tree fee of $500 that I spoke to earlier to be collected by the Parks Department. And finally 6F, because this is currently 2 lots, we will need to see a lot aggregation and be recorded by Flathead County, and as well as a subdivision exemption filed with the City of Whitefish. With that, I will note that on April 18th at a regular meeting, the Community Development Board did unanimously approve this project for review by the City Council. And I'm happy to take any questions at this time. We do have Matt Lawrence with Montana Creative somewhere in the audience, and Lisa Gorian is the owner, is present online.
Thanks, Luke. Any questions for Luke before we call up Matt or the owner? Steve.
Thanks, Luke. I just have a quick question. To me, it seems like we're giving up an awful lot for this, for 10%. We're giving up three, I mean, we're deviating from three of our zoning regulations for 10% affordable, and they want to take the cash, they want to pay the cash instead of actually build the units as well. So, to me, that, I'm a little unsure of, if we've had a project that asks this much for, in exchange for what seems to me to be little.
You know, I personally am not aware of exactly what parts of the Legacy Home Program has been used by too many of our projects. I know we've only had a handful come through with this iteration of that incentive program, but that is currently how it is written. Is there's a number of I guess, deviations that can be used. Whether you're just using one, all four, we don't make a differentiation at this time. That certainly is a comment we can take back and look for some further improvement in the program, but at this time, it does give the applicant to use one or more of those in exchange for either providing those units or the fee in lieu. There's not necessarily a significant determination made one way or the other. It does give the applicant some flexibility and freedom in that.
Okay, thank you.
Related to that, Luke, can we require that the developer actually build the units and deed restrict them, the 2.1 units?
Yes, this conversation did come up at the Community Development Board meeting. I have consulted with both the city manager and city attorney. It's not the way the program is written, it is not clear. It is not particularly clear, and we don't feel that as staff we can require that because this is a voluntary program written with more than one option to comply with this program. There's a little bit of language in the admin guidelines that does state a preference for the units. That certainly is to be expected. We would like to see the units, but it does not necessarily give us any reasoning or strong consideration to require participation one way or the other. So that is something we're learning in this project and do plan on making some modifications going forward. I guess if Angie or Dana would like to add in anything else.
Please.
Yeah, I can add. So John, the way that our actual ordinance is written is that the city will consider alternatives to actually constructing the units in certain circumstances. And they include high levels of property tax, high homeowners association dues, the predominance of short-term rentals, on-site development consisting of condos, and probably the closest one here would be location far from schools, transit, or shopping. So you can, the city council does have the discretion to require them to build it. It's just kind of whether you want to do that.
Okay, thanks for answering the question. Steve?
Can I ask Angie a quick question now?
Please.
Or should I wait? So Angie, is there anything that limits us to 10% then?
Yes, the statute limit, or the ordinance limits you to 10%.
But there's nothing that, so all they have to do is give 10% and then they can take advantage of all
Correct.
four of the other.
Correct. And, you know, Luke and I talked a little bit about refining. When this ordinance was created, it was a mandatory project. And when it was being created, we felt 10% of the development as being mandatory was appropriate. Now that it is discretionary, given that the legislature has taken away our right to do inclusionary housing, I think we can take a look at whether or not 10% is still appropriate.
Okay, thank you.
Out of curiosity, what is the cash in lieu equivalent per unit? Total, 618 total?
Total of 618 per, the fee in lieu for a single unit is $294,349.
Ben, you had a question, then Rebecca?
Yeah, I'm still confused on this because the zoning says you provide the units unless you meet one of these alternatives, like you just said. And you said the most likely alternative reason to use alternative compliance is because it's far from shopping and transit?
I am saying that those are not exclusive. Those are examples of when it is more appropriate to provide fee in lieu.
Yeah.
I'm saying in this situation, you know, there's probably not high property taxes. There's probably not homeowners associations dues. There's not a predominance to short-term rentals in that area. They're not condos. So, I mean, if you were guys looking at an alternative, I think that would be the most rational basis to allow them to do a fee in lieu rather than building the units.
That it's too far from shopping and transit and...
Well, I mean, you guys have denied a lot of other projects that are over the viaduct on the basis of traffic and, you know, Mountain Gateway. is not close to this, but it's not too far off. So I'm just saying, if you guys want to allow them to do an alternative, that one's just one that seems most rational to me, but it's up to you folks.
Okay, thank you.
Rebecca?
Yeah, in the original package from the developer or the owner, it said that they were planning to do affordable housing, and then they changed to cash in lieu, which I thought the discussion was good because I think we only have $9,000 left for the next 2 years because we've already committed to using those funds. So that would kind of give us a lot more to work with. But do you know why they changed from providing affordable housing that was deed restricted to cash in lieu?
I do know they went back and forth a little bit through the application process. I couldn't speak to reasons why they necessarily chose one versus the other.
Steve?
Just one more quick question, Luke. Sorry, I must have missed it in the packet. What would they be allowed to, how many units would they be allowed to build here? They're asking for 21. What would they be allowed to build if they weren't taking advantage of the density bonus?
That's a little bit more complicated because more than likely they're limited by parking is what's actually going to limit them, but 18 units would be by right. Probably they're getting about three units.
But they might be limited by parking otherwise if they didn't take
Yeah, I
advantage.
mean, it depends on what type of units you're going to provide and all that, however that works out. But
Okay, thank you.
Further questions for staff?
Can we ask a question of the owner or developer?
Let's open the public hearing. We'll have the applicant present, and then we can ask the applicant's representative questions. With that said, we did advertise for a public hearing on item 7A. We'll hold that public hearing now. I do have a short sign-up sheet, but I'll just call folks up at random, please. But I will invite Matt Lawrence or the applicant's representative to share with the council comments first. Anything from the applicant or applicant's representative? Matt?
Matt Lawrence, Montana Creative. Just here to answer any questions. We did go back and forth quite a bit on the discussion of cash in lieu versus units. I think the development group made a sort of committee decision to sort of go this pathway. Lisa can speak to it more. However, it was really just, those are our options. We can fit the parking to get that unit count to that, but we can't get to that unit count if we don't have the options that are offered to us. So by offering cash in lieu or the deeded units, what advantages do they get in unit count? All we did was the calculations on it. The decision either way was picked by the group. If you have any questions other than that, I'm happy to answer them too. And Doug's here too from the civil side of things.
Okay. Rebecca, did you have a question?
I also had a question about the size of the units because that came up in the planning board, but it wasn't in the minutes in detail. So that they're kind of small.
Yep.
And can you talk to what the square footage is going to be? They're all going to go at market rate then?
Sure. Off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you the exact foot of each unit, but they are efficient studios. The market showed that studios and one bedrooms or 2 bedrooms were the most popular, and then the programming dictated that we have a couple of 1 bedrooms in there. So again, parking drives unit count, and then drives the size based on, again, the parking layout that's required and what amount of dirt you have left over to fit in the height limit. So it's sort of a domino effect.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Further questions for Matt? Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, no problem.
Did your client have anything to add? Is her name Lisa? Yeah. Lisa, do you have anything to add this evening?
No, I think we've covered the questions.
Thank you. We'll move to public comment then. Any public comment on this item? Leo, I see your name signed up.
I'm Leo Keene. I live at 514 Pine Place, which is just up the road on off of Iowa Avenue to the north. So I drive by the property daily, and I'm familiar with the site. Looks like a good use for the property. But I should have probably researched this a little bit myself, but WR4, I would understand that that would be allowed 4 dwelling units per lot. Is that correct? And this is a conditional use permit, so I'm assuming that the condition is to change from 4 units per lot to a total of 21 on the however many lots it is. I don't understand. A graphic would have been helpful, but I don't quite get how we get 21 units on a WR4 property.
Is that a question?
That is a question.
We typically don't respond to questions during the public
Okay,
hearing. Leo.
that's why I should have done my own research, apparently. I got to find that out. It doesn't, my concern, of course, is in our neighborhood, it's zone WR2, which we have been assuming that means a duplex per lot. If this is setting a precedent of WR4 property with many more units, then I am concerned about this setting a precedent for our own neighborhood, which is zone WR2.
I believe it's 4 lots, so the allowable use by right density is 16 units. Leo?
It is 4
John,
lots.
it's not. You can do up to 18 units as a use by right.
18, okay.
Yep, and then it's a
The
conditional
3
use permit
additional.
for over 18.
Okay.
Well, that answers that question.
18,
So it's there's 3 more lots or 3 more dwelling units being asked for
Correct.
here. Okay. I don't understand how that would be a WR4, but I'll look into that. Apparently, those are 50-foot lots, and there's 4 50-foot lots. That's why I say a graphic would have been helpful. Back here in the audience,
R4 is just it's just a name. It doesn't mean 4 dwelling units per lot.
Well, what does WR2 mean then?
Well, WR2 means that it's a duplex lot.
A duplex.
But, yes, but WR4 is
Doesn't
just
mean
the
a
name for
fourplex.
it. It's our most dense housing, it's our most dense residential zone, WR4, which up to 18, you can get up to 18 units per lot.
Per
if
lot.
you have enough parking and that kind of stuff.
Okay. All right. Well, in that case, I think it's probably a pretty good site for what they're proposing. I do wish there would have been a graphic so we could see what it looks like. That would have been helpful. The 2 other things. One is sooner or later, I think Whitefish needs to be looking at precedents that we're setting for densities throughout the town. We keep adding and adding and adding density without really looking at quality of life for those of us who do live here. A, and B, our infrastructure is really taking a hit. I think in most cases the infrastructure would go ahead of the density or the developments, and we haven't been doing that. We've been trying to catch up with the density in town. I feel like our quality of life is suffering some as we add more and more people. There is a carrying capacity to Whitefish, how many people we can put here. The other thing, my other concern would be, we do have a tree ordinance now. This would be a good time for an inventory of the trees on that property. There are some, a couple of really nice big spruce that should be looked at, some willows and some other trees. And if the tree ordinance is going to really be taking effect, let's do an inventory of that and see how those trees can be protected or replaced during the construction. Other than that, it looks like a good use for the property, and I'm in favor of it.
Thank you, Leo.
Thank you.
Further public comment this evening? Michelle, anyone online?
Anybody who is online, if you'd like to speak towards this agenda item, please unmute your mic.
Joe?
Joe Courtney, 535 Colorado Avenue. I guess I didn't know if these are just 1 unit apiece or 2-story units. I missed that. If they're only 1 level, or if they're not on top of each other, that's, seems like pretty small space for 21 units on a half an acre. So I don't have any pros or cons against it. It's just, seems kind of small. And the cash in lieu of 10% of that really should represent maybe 2 lots. And 294 seems kind of small for cash in lieu of 2. And I know we don't have that law within the city, so I'm not even sure the 10% is, what do I want to say, lawful, because it's not written in to our ordinances anymore. So I guess that's it. Should get some more money.
Thanks, Joe. Dakota.
Dakota Whitman, 102 Dakota Avenue, just a couple blocks away from this development. And I just came up to really quick give full support for this development. As someone in the younger age bracket out here, there's a lot of struggle of people who can't afford to live in Whitefish, period, and we need density for that. And, you know, the quality of life for people in my age bracket, they don't have a quality of life in Whitefish because they can't afford to live here. And I think we need apartments like this, especially smaller ones like studios. You know, I live in a small studio apartment and it's great. I don't need that much. It lets me save money, so not everyone needs a huge 1 or 2 bedroom apartment. And I like the diversity of options that this gives my neighborhood, and I welcome the new neighbors that could potentially come. Thank you.
Thanks, Dakota.
Nathan Dugan, 937 Kalispell Avenue. Supportive of this as well. I didn't really look into it before tonight, but my memory's not perfect, but I can't remember any other developments recently that have come up that have offered a unit density of like 39 per acre. So that's, speaking of setting precedent, that's a great precedent to set. Happy to hear that there's a little bit of discontent, I guess, with the fee in lieu price. You know, I think I've come up here 3 times before and said that calculation probably should be adjusted. We're getting past the pandemic now, and I think that's gonna catch up since it is a lagging measure. But you guys do set that calculation, so maybe there's some room to adjust that in the future if you're not happy with it. Thanks.
Thanks, Nathan. Further public comment? I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Oh, excuse me. Sorry about that.
My bad. MacFi, 605 St. Moritz Drive. Also just speaking in support of this, love the location for increased density, walkable to downtown. Again, my generation definitely needs, you know, a little more availability of units in Whitefish. So just want to offer my support.
Thanks, Mac. Appreciate it. Further comments? Now I will go ahead and close the public hearing and turn it back to the council, preferably for a motion, please. Giuseppe.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move to approve WCUP 23-07, the findings of fact in the staff report and recommended conditions of approval as recommended by the Whitefish Community Development Board on April 18, 2024.
Thank you, Giuseppe. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilor Norton. Giuseppe, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, very quickly. I watched on YouTube the Community Development Board, and Steve, you missed, but Ben replaced you pretty well. My point being is I think it's time that we think about a work session to evaluate the criteria for the percentage and the adjudication of cash in lieu versus other solutions to get zone deviations at this point, because the times have changed and the Whitefish Housing Authority is in a different position in time, administering the cash in lieu maybe. So I'd like to suggest that in future we look at this process.
Thank you, Giuseppe. Ben?
May I offer a friendly amendment? I would move to add a condition that the compliance with the Legacy Homes program is done by providing 2 deed-restricted units and a cash in lieu for the remainder.
Thank you, Ben. It's a friendly amendment. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilor Cornell. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Yeah, I would. For those in the audience who are not familiar, we have this Legacy Homes program, and the general premise is we allow certain zoning deviations in exchange for a percentage of the units in the project to be deed restricted affordable units. I am, as somebody who was involved in the initial drafting of this plan, I'm fairly perplexed by the interpretation that the developer is able to offer at their discretion a cash in lieu or the units, because I have a very clear recollection in my head that the original version of this program required units unless certain carve-outs. And so I think to the extent if there's a belief that it is an entirely discretionary thing, I think we should revisit that at a later date. But the reality is the community needs affordable housing units. That is the entire purpose of this program. We are not here to extract money out of the developer. We need units. And money can be turned into units, but it takes a lot of years. It's expensive, and quite frankly, the government is just not as good at building housing units as the private sector is. And so I think the entire purpose of this program is to have the units be provided throughout the community in each project that uses this, rather than trying to take a lot of money and build it all in one place at some time many years down the road. So sorry for the long speech, but I do feel like the intent of this program is to provide units, and my motion is to require that in this case. Thank you.
Totally agree. Further comments?
I just want to second everything Ben said and just add that in the long term, providing 2 units that are deed restricted in perpetuity gives us a lot more value than $618,000. And quite frankly, I'm appalled that that we are giving up so much for as little as 2 units. We're giving up parking, we're giving up density in an already dense area that people are concerned about. And we're also giving up a building height that has been a bone of contention in a lot of our projects that we have built. So I also want to second what Giuseppe said, that we need to revisit how you access this program and what you get for as little as 10% affordable housing.
Rebecca.
Yep. This is exactly the kind of project we were hoping for when we approved the Wisconsin Avenue corridor study, because it was only that first block off of Wisconsin that we were going to go high and dense, so that it wouldn't impact the adjacent neighborhoods as much, and it's very close to the arterial of Wisconsin. I'm not going to support what your friendly amendment is, because I'm actually thinking it's a little worrisome to only have $9,000 in our affordable housing fund, given that we don't know. We're hoping the snow lot's going to go. We're hoping Alpenglow will finish. We still have a rental assistance program, and there's just other properties that might come on that we could use the money. And so I was comfortable with the planning board's decision to go with the cash in lieu. So even though I could go either way, but I still think it would be nice to have more money for the next 2 years in our housing fund to be able to access as needed.
We're going to go ahead and, did you have a comment, Frank?
Yeah, my one comment is this, is that one of the things that I think Ben alluded to was the reason it is important for us to incorporate, where we can, the affordable housing into existing projects or to new projects, is that we want, in fact, an integration of affordable housing with the entire community. We don't want reservations. That's not what this community is about. And so I think it's really important that where we can and where it makes sense, that we get the units, not the money. So I'm going to support this.
Giuseppe?
Just on the friendly amendment, I followed the meeting and I understand your point. And it's actually 2.1 units. And originally Ben suggested 2 units plus the remainder as a pro rata of the cash in lieu. While the sentiment is for it, I think we have rules, we have an ordinance in place, and previous developers had to come through those rules. And I have concerns about knee-jerky changing the rules of engagements for cash in lieu versus affordable units permanently deeded. The other point that I listened to during the Community Development Board, and Rebecca, you expressed it today, is that the cash in lieu, maybe this time, compared to the fact that the units are so small, they might end up very close to be, if not affordable, workforce housing kind of units. I think that when Daniel Sider presented that he managed to allocate $317 a month of help to renters to 17 approved applicants, shows that cash can go a long way too if managed wisely. For those reasons, I vote against your amendment.
Frank?
Giuseppe, I'm now having a discussion with you. I just want you to be clear that Ben's motion actually requires us to follow the rules that are established in the ordinance today. In other words, the exception to providing the units is based on one of the exceptions that Angie provided to us. They don't fit any of those, not a single one. So that to the extent your concern is about changing the rules for them as a knee-jerk reaction, quite the contrary. We're asking them to follow the rules. Sure.
May I ask Dave and Angie, because if I misspoke, I apologize, and I will vote in favor.
No, Giuseppe, generally we do prefer the units, but there are certain circumstances that I read off in which council can do cash in lieu, land in lieu. It's kind of up to you folks if it fits any of those. Like I said, I don't think it fits most of them. Maybe locations from schools, transit, or shopping, but I don't think it does fit most of those, so.
I'm going to go ahead and call for the vote, which will be to add condition number 8 as a friendly amendment. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and the motion does pass on a 3-2 vote with Councilors Norton and Caltabiano voting in opposition, which brings us back to the original motion for approval as amended with the addition of condition number 8. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that motion does carry unanimously. Thank you, Matt, and thank you, Luke, for the staff presentation. We'll move on to item 7B, which is approval to submit an SPA 124 permit to Riverbend Miles section of the Whitefish River Trail, and I'll ask Craig to address this item.
Yeah. Good evening, Mayor and Council and members of the audience. My staff report begins on page 140 of your packet. I've made an effort to keep this relatively brief. I think there's probably some historical perspective in this room that predates me that you're likely going to hear from. And so you don't need to hear me ramble on, but I will start off back in, as soon as I find my, I should also mention we have members of our consulting team here tonight. Doug, Kate, Brad, and Bruce are all here, so if there are any technical questions, I may defer to them. Anyway, back on October 7th, 1983, an easement was granted to the city of Whitefish for a public walkway and bicycle riding path. This easement was granted in exchange for the city vacating a stretch of right-of-way on East First Street. Is that too loud? Sorry if I'm blasting people. On East First Street between Miles Avenue and the Whitefish River. This easement was granted for the trail, and it was what allowed the condominium units known as Riverbend to be constructed. The approval of that project also required a path to be built, and a raised boardwalk path was constructed. It was constructed under the approval of the Flathead Conservation District, and once it was built, it confirmed the location of the easement that was granted to the city. Although the boardwalk has since been deconstructed, I have provided aerial photos which we've identified in the packet, as well as several other images which show evidence of its previous existence. With the boardwalk removed, the establishment of the easement was quickly forgotten. However, significant progress to the trail system has been made since then, leaving this section of trail as a critical missing link. We have provided a number of different trail options to the Riverbend HOA over the past decade or so, and none of these options were met with their approval. I did provide a detailed account of the project history in the packet, and we can refer to that. later on if need be. But I will tell you that on September 6th of 2022, council unanimously voted to proceed with the elevated path design for the Riverbend Trail. This was a concept that Bruce Booty very generously put together on his own time. The city subsequently hired TD&H and the design team that's in the room tonight to assist with surveying and preliminary engineering to move the project forward. Earlier this year, on January 2nd, staff presented preliminary designs to council, and council authorized us to proceed with the final engineering and the submittal of an SPA, or Stream Protection Act 124 permit through Fish, Wildlife, and Parks to build this section of trail. The intent of this section of trail will extend from the Memorial Bridge all the way to the existing BNSF Loop Trail. So this, of course, includes the adjacent section of trail next to the recently completed Miles Avenue condominiums. Since that approval back in January, we've been working with our design team to finalize plans and complete the application for the 124 permit, and those are included in your packet as well. In doing so, we evaluated construction and material options based on several different factors, including durability, constructability, and cost. And we looked at four main options. A wood stringer support system with wood decking. This was the lowest cost option with the least durability. A steel support section with wood decking, a steel support section with precast concrete decking, and a steel section with cast and place concrete, which of course would be the highest option. Upon evaluating the alternatives, we're recommending that option 3 be constructed, which would be a steel support structure with precast concrete decking. We also completed a detailed geotechnical assessment. I'll tell you the soils are not good. We'll just leave it at that. I could go into a lot more detail, but we're going to need a fairly dynamic foundation system for this, and for that we are recommending helical piers. Helical piers are essentially large screws that are drilled into the ground, creating much less disturbance than an excavated or a pile-driven foundation. But we're anticipating them to reach between 70 and 100 feet of total depth to support the structure. The plan sheets are included in your packet, should you like additional detail. In terms of costs, to date we've spent about $32,000. Actually, that's through March. I think we probably spent more in April finalizing this, but we have a total budget of $75,000 with TD&H to get the 124 permit submitted. So we're still within budget. In terms of construction cost, we're estimating a total bill of about $1.5 to $2 million to build this section of trail. We have identified future budgets through a combination of general funds, paved trail impact fees, and resort tax dollars. And the developer of the Miles Avenue section of trail will also be contributing about $200,000 to the construction of the project. So based on all that information, it is the recommendation of staff and the Bike Ped Committee that a public hearing be held to consider the submittal of this enclosed 124 permit. And at the close of the hearing, staff does recommend that council direct us to finalize and submit the application.
Thank you, Craig. Any questions for Craig on his staff report? None.
Craig, the costs, you have some costs, some cost options in here, option 1, 2, 3, 4. That's just for the stringer, the deck. That's not the total cost of the project.
Correct. That's just the cost of the actual the support system and the decking. It does not include all the helical piers that will be required.
Okay. And is the $1.5 to $2 million construction estimate, how has that changed over time? Is that more or less or the same than the last time we looked at this?
It's increased significantly. When we shifted to the raised boardwalk system, it's going to require a much more elaborate construction methodology than just an on-grade or an at-grade path. And so, yeah, it's gone up dramatically.
And the $200,000 developer contribution is now starting to look like pretty low compared to the cost of this project. Is that fair?
So the $200,000 developer contribution will just be for that section of trail adjacent to the Miles Avenue condominiums, which will not be a raised boardwalk. It'll just be an at-grade path. And that's based on a quote that the developer received from their contractor to build that section of trail.
Rebecca?
Craig, if we disturb residue from the railroad, like that would have, you know, when we cleaned up the river and there was a lot of residue underneath, have we factored that in with our project costs?
At this point, I don't believe our costs anticipate any environmental remediation or cleanup, but I will tell you that's one of the primary reasons for the helical pier type foundation is that it creates very little disturbance to the stream bed.
Further questions? Not seeing any. We did advertise for a public hearing on item 7A of our agenda. Just for the record, we do have the signed petition, the letters, those have all been entered as part of the public record. So out of the spirit of keeping our meeting efficient, if you don't mind limiting comments to 3 minutes. And if someone in front of you said exactly what you're going to say, you can just say, I support what he said or she said. That would be appreciated. But welcome your comments now from the public. You remember, John.
Well, hi, everybody. My name is John Wilson. There's a couple of you I haven't met, and just as background, I used to be Craig Workman. I did that for 18 years before he did. And before I did that, in 1982, I was a carpenter, and I helped build those condominiums and that walkway. I don't have a lot of important information to offer, just based on, that's my interest in it. At the time we built it, I remember we laughed about, oh, this, is a boardwalk to nowhere. And I think it very much, as John or somebody said, it's the critical link now. I can't think of a link of trail in town that's more important. But so since '82, I've had an interest in this project. As my kids were growing up, I remember standing on the bridge and describing the trail to them and telling them that was going to go in. They asked, oh, great, when can we ride that trail? I said, well, I think you might be out of school by then, and they're in their 30s now. But it was really interesting to me because I haven't stayed in touch with this as I looked at the packet to see all the hard work that's happened, from the council to staff to volunteer committees. It's really been great to see it move forward. During my time here, it was maybe not moving forward, but it stayed alive, the idea, but so much has happened recently, it's terrific to see. So I just wanted to give you that little bit and encourage you to support the recommendation and direct staff to complete the application and submit it.
Thanks, John. Appreciate your comments. Tommy.
Hello. I would just like to very briefly, hopefully, add my voice to the hopefully cacophonous support for this river project. Yeah, bike path is good, defeats the purpose if you have to get off your bike and cross the trail, or across the street. So, thank you very much.
Thanks, Tommy.
Good evening. My name is Austin Reese. I live at 1253 Whitefish Village Drive. I'm married with 2 daughters, and we love to be outside and explore our community. I have limited places that I can spend time with my family outdoors without the assistance of very expensive adaptive equipment. Having the paved multi-use trail system should be a huge priority for the community. I think it's great that we're supporting it and it's going through. I spoke on this, I think it was almost 2 years ago, roughly a year and a half. But to continue the path and connecting behind the riverbed, I think is long over, the riverbend condos, excuse me, is long overdue. I think the crossing over 93 North onto Miles Avenue is dangerous, and for people in my situation and anybody who uses adaptive equipment or mobility devices is unsafe and not a plausible solution. So I greatly appreciate everybody's work in doing this. I thank you guys for your time and getting this pushed through.
Thank you, Austin. Appreciate it.
Good evening. My name is Julie Tickle. I live at 140 Burley Bear Trail in Whitefish. Personal note, my father served on a city council for 16 years while I was growing up, so I do truly appreciate all the time and efforts that you put into your public service. I'm here tonight not only as a resident of Whitefish, but as the executive director of Dream Adaptive Recreation and as a committee member of Safe Trails Whitefish. For those of you who don't know, Dream has been serving the Flathead Valley, specifically the Whitefish area, for 39 years with a mission to enhance and empower the lives of people with disabilities by providing access to outdoor recreation and the many benefits that stem from it. You've heard from and you'll hear from some individuals that benefit from our programs and live in this community. I'm here to ask you tonight, and anyone in this room or who will read the reports playing any part in the trail project, to prioritize and act with urgency to create a safe and universally designed and connected multi-use trail system in Whitefish, starting with this River Bend Miles Ave section. A few facts that I'd like to quickly share with you on the importance of creating universally designed outdoor spaces in our community as it relates to inclusion for the disabled population. 1, disability impacts us all. 1 in 4 adults has a disability in the United States, and 12% have a disability that impacts mobility. If you yourself don't have lived experience, I guarantee that someone you know in your lifetime will. 2, the second fact I'd like to share is the disabled community is the only minority group that anyone can join at any time. While that is, of course, not the only reason that we should care about equal access, it's yet one more reason too. 3, have you heard about the inaccessibility cycle? This cycle shows that when there are barriers for people with disability to access places and services, the disabled community is unable to participate. And because they cannot participate, the disabled community are not visible or seen in public. That lack of visibility then makes the disabled population not thought about, or thought about as an outlier or a rarity in those places. So the community believes there's no reason or need to consider them, and then the cycle continues. The current Riverbend Miles Ave section of trail is extremely inaccessible and unsafe. Our Safe Trails Whitefish group has spoken to Police Chief Kelch, and we are all in agreement that the current option to cross 93 North and go up and down Miles Ave is a serious issue of public safety. Just like the facts I've shared on disability, it's a fact that the only safe and accessible route through this section is to follow the easement along the river to connect the two existing sections of trail. I urge you to please act with an increased sense of urgency, because I've stood up here before, not only on this section, but the many other sections lacking connectivity and universal design principles. A safe, connected, multi-purpose trail system is a critical means of transportation and recreation for all community members. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Diane.
Diane Conradi, 419 Avenue, Spokane. I know you guys are used to hearing me here talk about the Whitefish Trail, but I'm here to talk about Safe Trails Whitefish. And we were here in November of 2022. I'm seeing some familiar faces. I wish we were here cutting a ribbon, but we're still in the pre-permitting stage, so I just want to let you know that we and 400 people who signed our petition really care about getting this section done. And so people can safely walk and roll through Whitefish as for all of the reasons that Julie Tickle just stated. As we all know, we really support this moving forward. This permit is long overdue to restore, as John mentioned, to restore this really critical section, to connect it to the next section with a developer who's absolutely ready, willing, and able to make the connection to the rest of the trail. And it just continues the transportation conversation that we've had today. We've talked about busing conversation. We've talked about increasing density with walkability to downtown. Well, this is part of that, this section of the trail. So I just want you to know that our group, Safe Trails Whitefish, is a coalition of trail users and trail advocates, and we are going to stand with you to make sure that we get this section done. And I'm really actually ready for the next sections so I can wheel my mom, who's in a wheelchair at the Springs now. So I've got my eye down there. So just know that when we're done with this, we're going down there. Thank you all so much for continuing this, and let's get her done.
Thanks, Dan. Bruce.
Good evening, Bruce Booty, 301 2nd Street. And I just wanted to, I'll just paraphrase a couple things here. I submitted my written comments, so I'll let those stand. But this is a long time. We celebrated in private the 40th year of holding this easement. That's when the council encouraged the original developer to place that easement on the property. And encouraged, I mean, if you want your project, give us this easement. It's critical. So here we are 40 plus years later, and I'm in the same frame of mind as everybody else. Let's move this forward. And I also want to just real briefly say that city staff has been working on this hand in hand with everybody who's been involved with this. And I think they deserve a big hand for what they've done. So, thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. Appreciate the comments.
Hi, Antonia Malchik, 528 9th Street West in Whitefish. I want to thank council for your stalwart support, some of you for decades for this project and moving it forward. And I don't want to reiterate so much of the research that went into presentations a year and a half ago when council supported this project. There's been some talk this evening about quality of life in Whitefish, but it's not density of living, it's really cars and traffic and the noise and pollution they bring that affect the quality of life most, even in cities. Since you have all the research that the Bike and Pedestrian Committee has presented and lots of comments from the public, I just wanted to specifically address the permit itself, FWP's mission in issuing the 124 permits. Part of it says, it's from the Stream Protection Act of 1963. The purpose of this permit is to maintain streams and rivers in their natural existing state and to protect and preserve fish and wildlife resources. And that one thing that hasn't come up in all our meetings of the Bike and Pedestrian Committee or with FWP is that there is increasing amount of research showing that the majority of microplastic pollution in waterways, especially affecting fish, comes from tire residue, excuse me, from cars. The EPA now says that 85% of microplastics in waterways come from cars, including a word I can't pronounce that is fatal to coho salmon. And I think it's really important that we remind FWP that if their purpose in permitting or denying these permits is to protect the fisheries, that we really have to think about the decisions we make on infrastructure and use and lifestyle that also affect those fisheries. So it's not just about what we're building along the river, it's about the decisions we're making that can send pollutants into that river that might be far worse than something else we build alongside it. If anyone on council might have extensive experience working with rivers, it might be good to talk with FWP and remind them of that, because that's some research I haven't seen come up, and it is quite extensive and worldwide at this point. So thank you, everybody, for your support on this.
Appreciate it.
Lucas Stacy, 125 Lidstrom. I'd just like to second what Austin said, Father, with the disability. Limited places where I can recreate with my kid. Around here, there's so many trails and stuff. You know, this project may not get done by the time he still wants to hang out with me, but for future generations, you know, more and more people moving into this valley means more and more people with disabilities coming. So for the future generations, I'd like to see this get done. I appreciate your help.
Thanks, Lucas. Casey?
Casey Malmquist, excuse me, 160 Walker Creek Lane. The time has come to get this done. A couple things I just want to refresh is the Veterans Bridge was put in as a key transportation improvement, and yes, had an impact on the river, significantly greater than what we're proposing for this trail section. And that was permitted. And I think we need to look at the trail system as part of our transportation system, which I don't think everyone does view it that way, but it is, and it's going to grow, and we need to move in that direction. Also in that consideration, there was over $1 million spent to create the underpass in that bridge to connect that section of trail. So we've got two ends of this, including my end, that are willing to go and ready to connect. So I strongly encourage us to move forward with this. And on that note, I would like to suggest council start looking at, the trail system is a crown jewel valued asset for the community of Whitefish and will continue to be. The easy parts arguably are done and they're in. And we're left with remnants and scattered bits and pieces and missing parts. As I've learned, and I think you've learned, having two projects that have this as a condition of approval, which I thought would be really easy other than the hard part of paying for it, and then have been basically unable to do this. It's a highly complex situation that requires a lot of attention, and I think another thing is it requires ownership. And when I say that, staff has been fabulous in working through this, but they all have full-time jobs and frankly more responsibilities now than they're oftentimes capable of handling. I would like council to consider staffing, looking at a staffing position for a trail czar or something along those lines, but someone who can own that. And that is their responsibility, they're accountable for it, and can do a lot of work that has been done and do it quickly and be able to, I truly believe without ownership, things just get pushed off. So someone who's accountable and responsible for that. And as a community, I know we can make this happen. So thank you.
Thanks, Casey.
My name is Randy Karsbeck, and I have a unique perspective. My wife and I bought a house right next to the controversy in 1988. I've also been a DREAM volunteer since 1999. So this morning, and every morning of the year, I walk up Miles Avenue, right on the hazard we're talking about. There's, and I've seen families going up that little climb with big BNSF trucks going by, and I'm just waiting for someone to get hammered. I mean, a fatality going up that Miles. It's a serious hazard. The hazard happens every day. So as soon as that bike path is extended, that'll take all that traffic off of that hill going up Miles Avenue. It's a lot of BNSF traffic that goes up that, and they're all good people. I've talked to BNSF, but those trucks are this big, okay? And that Miles Avenue is pretty narrow, so you have a serious hazard, a daily hazard there without that bike path going to avoid that Miles Avenue hill. And we've observed that since 1988. I've also, like I said, been a DREAM volunteer, and I really feel the access is important for our disabled people and to be able to go through that bike path without going over 93, which is a big stopping point. And thank you all for all your volunteer work. I think the city of Whitefish has been doing some great progressive work, so I appreciate it.
Thanks, Randy.
My name's Andre LaRose. I live at 325 Hagen Heights Road, and I just pretty much agree with everything that everyone said. And just want to express my support for putting in the application. I think it's really important to have inclusive communities so that people with all kinds of mobility differences and needs can access the trails, and kids going to schools and all of us. Thank you.
Regan.
Hi, Regan Peschel, 1412 West Lake Shore Drive, and I'll keep it short. I'm in full support of this for all the reasons that everyone has said this evening. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yep, you're hot.
Hello, I'm Les Fuller. I live here in Whitefish. I'm visually impaired, and I love the Whitefish trail system. So with that being said, I super support the Miles Avenue Riverbend repairs, and I got a chance to see it today, and I'm not gonna lie to you, I was scared. So it'd be great to complete that project. I would really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks for the comments. Chris.
Chris Conklin, 319 Haugen Heights. Thank you for everything you do, and I'm not going to be here for the next public hearing, but you guys should get paid. But on this public hearing, I agree with everything everybody said. I remember the section that was there in the 80s and 90s. I didn't use it because I didn't live on that side of town, but I live on that side of town now, and I would love to see that thing go in. So anything you can do to get it done?
Thanks, Chris.
Steve Sutherland, 319 Haugen Heights. I just want to say ditto. Go for there.
Thanks, Steve. Chance, last but not least.
Yes, thank you guys for everything you do. I appreciate all your time and energy that goes into keeping Whitefish moving forward. Thank you. I speak for my wife and my daughter Kate that's in the audience tonight. We're in favor for everything that's been stated, for all the same reasons, for all the same interests and concerns. And thanks again. Please push this forward. Please make it happen. In the near future. Thanks.
Thanks, Chance. Further public comment tonight on this item? Michelle, anyone online?
Ed, do you have anything to say towards this?
I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and turn it back to the council for a motion. Frank?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr.
Too late.
Okay for a motion?
Yeah.
Frank.
Oh, sorry.
I would move to approve the 124 permit submission that has been proposed by Craig and his staff report. I think the choice of the third option is actually brilliant, because I think it does all the things that we need it to do. It also minimizes any impact it might have on the river and any possible pollution that might come from anything like that. So I really like the thought that was put into that option and why we're pursuing that option. And so with that, and I'll have one other comment after if I get a second.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Giuseppe Caltabiano and Frank.
You guys have all recognized the staff work that's been gone into this. And I think you all recognize that there is nothing we have worked on maybe harder in terms of our trail system than this section. We will not let up until we get it done. We will need all of your voices on our work with FWP and DNRC to get this thing completed. So don't quit on us now. Don't think your work is done. We will need your help. We will need your voices. So please stay with us.
Further comments on the motion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that motion carries unanimously. Thanks, everyone, for coming this evening. We're going to take a 2-minute recess and reconvene here at about 9:02. Started. If everyone could take their seats, please, we're going to go ahead and get started so we can wrap up. Who's? Yep. It is. Michelle has this item, right? We're going to go ahead and get started and reconvene. We'll move to item 7C of our agenda, which will be ordinance 24-4, an ordinance submitting to the qualified electors of the city of Whitefish, Montana, the question of whether to amend Article 2, Section 2-014 of the city charter to delete the provision prohibiting city council members from receiving salaries, and this will be on a first reading. Angela or Dana? Angela.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. So my report begins on page 204 of the packet. Just a little background, the city charter was adopted by the voters in 1980, and Article 2, Section 2.014 provides that members of the council shall receive no salary. As provided by ordinance, they shall receive per diem and mileage allowances for expenses incurred in the performance of their duties of the office. In accordance with the charter, council members have not received compensation in the past, but they've kind of received some de minimis benefits, including reimbursement for purchase of an electronic device up to $500, reimbursement for use of a personal cell phone or access to a city-paid cell phone, a waived membership paid in full by the city, and the ability to opt into the city's health insurance program, which means the councilors pay the full premium for the product that they select. The question of compensating council members has come up several times, and back, okay, I can't remember what it was, council directed staff to research how other council members and mayors are compensated. On February 5th, you folks had a work session and discussed the results of that, and you subsequently held another work session on February 20th to discuss compensation and the possibility of the city paying for health insurance premiums. Per Montana law, an amendment to a self-government charter may only be made by submitting the question of amendment to the electors of the local government, and it further provides that the amendment may be proposed by ordinance. So that is what is in front of you this evening. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. At that meeting too, we discussed providing health insurance benefits, or having the city pay for health insurance benefits as kind of an administrative policy, but you folks did direct that go to the voters as well. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thanks, Angela. Any questions for Angie? Steve?
Do you think the voters understand what de minimis means? Can we put that in more pedestrian-friendly language?
Sure. That actually is all, those benefits were done by administrative policy, Steve. So that actually wouldn't go to the voters. What you guys directed us to go to, or to present ballot language on, was compensation such as a salary, stipend, health insurance, and per diem and mileage allowance, which has always been part of the charter too. So those other benefits, the waived membership, the ability to opt in and pay for insurance, those have always been pursuant to administrative policy. I mean, I guess if you guys wanted to take that to the voters as well, you could.
No, I'm just trying to make sure that the language that we are approving here tonight is something that is understandable by the voters. Is that not the language in background? It's not. Okay.
No, the
I'm sorry.
actual language would say members of the council may receive a compensation such as salary, stipend, health insurance, per diem, and mileage allowance, all as set by resolution after a public hearing That's
Okay.
the actual language.
Okay, thank
I
you.
was just, my staff report is just providing some background of, this, kind of the small benefits that you guys do get.
Yes, I understand that part. Sorry, I misread the report. Thank you, sorry.
Thanks, Steve. Further questions? Ben, then Rebecca?
All right, I'm sorry, this is a really minor grammatical point, but this is the opportunity when these things come up. When it says salary, stipend, health insurance, per diem, and mileage allowance, should it say or mileage allowance, so it's a little more clear that we're not saying we're doing all of these things, we're just saying they are options?
Sure, we can make that change.
Rebecca?
Yeah, I wanted to also change one thing so I had a conversation with Angie and Dana about not eliminating health insurance for people that are currently on it. So the language would read city paid health insurance, if you guys are open to that, instead of just plain health insurance, which would indicate that the city would pay the premium for the city councilor or mayor. Whereas right now, we pay that if we're on that insurance. So it would just be adding city-paid health insurance.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense. I think that adds some clarity.
And then the other question I had is, what is the difference between a salary and a stipend?
A stipend is a set dollar amount that is determined based on what activities you are doing. There's difference on taxability when it comes to that from the IRS standpoint. A salary is something where you would set, it could be like a $5,000 salary, but really it comes down to how you treat that in a taxability format for the IRS.
So do other city councilors in the state, since there's only 2 cities that don't reimburse city councilors or mayors, Troy and us, do the other ones do a stipend or a salary, or is it a mix?
I think there's a mix,
okay,
to be honest. Yeah.
Thank you.
Further questions? We did advertise for a public hearing on ordinance 24-4. We'll hold that hearing now. Public comment is welcome. Name and address for the record, please.
I've talked to half of you, and half of you have asked me to run for city council. And if I was going to do that at this point in my life, because I'm making a career change, following Steve's footsteps, and going to be making a ton of money in education, if I was going to do this, I would personally, if I'm taking on a second-time job like you guys are, putting in more than 40 hours a week, I would need some type of compensation to be able to do this. So I'm in support of this, whatever that might be. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
My name's Beth Soba, 333 Baker Avenue, Whitefish. I am in favor of compensation for the job that you all do, but I am concerned that the language that you're approving, and I was a little unclear whether or not this is going on the ballot or this is just the change in the charter be changed. This language will be the new language in the charter. And
No,
also on the ballot?
It's a ballot initiative.
Okay.
It would have to be voted by the voters.
So it seems a little vague because there's no discussion of a limit on things such as salaries or stipend, or they're just open-ended.
No, so the way it's worded is, if this is adopted by the voters, it would then be advertised for another public hearing to where limits, options would be set via
Who sets them? The public?
resolution. There would be a recommendation from staff working with the council on what those
So
levels
there's
would be.
more to be discussed? here?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, there'll be 2 more public hearings.
And my other observation was kind of along those same lines, oversight. I guess that satisfies the question of oversight over and above yourselves. And then will the implementation, the timing of the implementation be also discussed then?
I believe the way it's written is it'll be effective January 1 of the following calendar year, correct?
No, actually, per state law, if you guys don't set another timeline, it actually begins the first day of the following fiscal year.
So July 1st, 2025.
Correct, but if
Okay.
you guys want to set a different time, you guys can do that. But what the statute basically says is that it's gonna have to be, amendment approved by the electors becomes effective on the first day of the local government fiscal year following the fiscal year of approval unless the question submitted to the electors provides otherwise. So if you guys wanted to provide another date, January 1st, I guess makes sense to me too, we would have to insert that in the ballot language as well.
Given the fact that we'd have to hold 2 more public hearings and work through the details, it's realistically wouldn't be implementable until March or April anyway.
So just to be clear, this is just changing the charter. Any type of compensation or salary stipend, all of that, you would have to go through the process. You can then choose a different date to make that effective. So this is just changing the charter and that effective date. You could move that up and make it January 1 of 2025 if you so choose. But again, it doesn't mean compensation starts then. It could start whenever your resolution after your public hearings dictates.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for the clarification.
Thanks, Beth. Further public comment this evening? Joe?
I guess first off, thank you, everybody, on the city council for your dedication and hard work and the time that you do put in. I really appreciate that. I got a question whether or not whether all this compensation, the stipends and the pay and everything is going to be kind of like city staff now, would be an automatic raise every year, which has been about 3%, I think, every year. And then, I had a question on voting for the public, but I think you kind of answered that. You're voting and then going for a second hearing after that, so that got answered. I didn't hear whether or not any member would be paid if they were absent. I'm talking to you, Andy. If you were absent the meeting or not, or anything would be deducted. So I don't know if that would occur. Does any of the pay go towards any kind of a retirement stipend that the city employees get? I don't know about that either. So, and are the council members now going to be under the authority of the city manager? Or your volunteers, yeah, you listen to the city manager, but you're not really being paid, so city manager just talks to you. But now that you're getting paid, could that influence possibly on how you vote for something, because now you're getting paid by the city? So I guess that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Further public comment tonight? Michelle, anyone online? I'm not seeing anyone. Oh, there's Ed. Name and address, please, Ed.
I'm not just anyone. Can you hear me? Yes. I don't know.
Yes, we can hear you.
Working. Oh, you can?
Yes.
Ed Doctor, on the Tap House, 845 Wisconsin Avenue. I get a lot of people's confusion, but the way I understand this, you're trying to just get the ball rolling. And I've been one of the guys behind it for a while, for sure, thinking you guys should be compensated. I don't think maybe 120 grand a year like Quinnell wants, but something reasonable. I'm just kidding. But I fully support it. I'm glad you get the ball rolling on it, and I look forward to the public having a lot of input on what they think our council deserves. So thanks a lot, you guys. Thanks for everything you do.
Thank you, Ed. That's it. I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and move it back to the council for preferably a motion one way or another. Steve?
Make a motion that we approve, I've lost what?
24-4.
24-4, and the adoption of Angie's staff report.
Is there a second to the motion? Okay. Steve, would you like to comment on your motion, or? Okay, Rebecca?
I'd like to make friendly amendments to change language to say city-paid health insurance, number one, and to change the date of implementation to 1/1/25.
Is there a second to that friendly amendment?
Can we split it?
Yeah.
May I suggest there are two amendments, so we can
Let's start
move-
with the first,
Yeah.
Okay.
which would be to add city
City
paid.
paid health insurance is the first one.
I'll second that.
Okay. Further discussion on that friendly amendment? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign. And that
Second. Oh, sorry.
that carries on a 4-1 vote with Councilor Cornell voting in opposition. And your next one, Rebecca?
To change the date of implementation to January 1st, 2025.
Further discussion? Giuseppe? Or Rebecca?
No, I just think we've been waiting for the public to weigh in on this. If it passes, I don't see any reason to wait for the fiscal year to end, since we have a public process that's going to be unfolding anyways. So.
Giuseppe?
Yeah, my comment about that is I think it's irrelevant in my mind because changing the charter effective January 1st, 25 or July 1st, 25 doesn't affect the compensation of the council members. What will affect their compensation is indeed a resolution after 2 readings and a public hearing. Now, when we do that, I will recommend that we are not eligible because a vote in that sense would cause a financial advantage to myself, and hence I would have to recuse under conflict of interest. Since the soonest people to expire are Ben Davis, myself, and I forget, Andy, I think that starting the change of charter July 1st, 25 versus January 1st, 25 doesn't make any difference. And will add more thinking to the voters that need to focus on this decision here.
Ben, and then Rebecca, then Steve.
My only response to that is I think it'd be nice to have this in place prior to the next election, and more specifically, prior to people deciding to run or not next year. So that decision would be happening, I believe, by the end of May, roughly. And I think it would be nice for the people who will be running to know what they're signing up for prior to deciding to run. That's my only comment.
Under that, I agree with you, Ben. On that view, yes.
Rebecca?
Yeah, this is for the future. It's not for us. I know you guys are sensitive to that, but I recommended this 11 years ago now. So we have a lot of need in our community to encourage participation in the public process, and this is one way that we can do it. People might not want to take a stipend if they're elected. They might not need health insurance, but for people that might benefit from that, if they have leadership skills, it could make a difference in them running and serving. So, I know you guys are sensitive to taking anything when we're all volunteers, but this really is about the future.
Steve, did you have a comment? Okay. Further comments on the friendly amendment to add the date of January 1st, 2025 in terms of effectiveness? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that's unanimous as well, which brings us back to the original motion as amended, which will be the adoption of ordinance 24-4. Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a few comments about this and about some of the comments that have come through the board and through our previous discussions and work sessions about being paid, and some of the comments that have been talked about in this room tonight. The question arose during the last election, do you think city councilors should be paid? It arose more than once. There was a public meeting where I stated unequivocally that, yes, it's time that we get paid. I think, in fact, I said it would be great if I thought that we could continue doing this work without getting paid, but it has simply become too much of a task to not get paid to do this. So I think that there is this sentiment among among this council and among some people in the public who think that, well, you signed up for this knowing that you wouldn't get paid. Well, I did run for election knowing that the charter said that I couldn't be paid. I also stated clearly that I think that it was high time to change the charter during my election campaign. So the notion that this has not ever really been talked about and that we should all be doing this pro bono, I think is false. It's at least false from my campaign perspective. And other than that, I think that it's also high time that we put our money where our mouth is as a community and decide, do we want the best possible people to be on this city council? And are we limiting some of the best people from running because they financially can't afford it? We've done a lot of work to make sure we have the best staff, to make sure that we take care of the people that work for the city and do the work for our city. And it's time that we consider, and we go send it out to the voters to consider, do we think that that in some small token, and Ed made a joke about $120,000, that's certainly not anywhere near the ballpark of what we would be considering in terms of being paid. It would be something similar to other communities within our state. And I think that people need to understand that going into this. So it's past time for this council to take action to make sure that not only the current council, but future councils are compensated for their time and their efforts in maintaining this city that we all hold dear. So I was the one who made this motion, and I strongly support that we get the ball rolling on January 1st to get the charter changed, and very soon thereafter start coming up with ideas for how we should be compensated.
Further discussion? All those in favor, please. Ben, excuse me.
I was just going to make a quick comment. I have the dubious distinction of being the youngest person on the city council, I do believe. And I have no hair left, and I'm past the halfway point. So, look, I think as the community grows, the work that gets done here gets more difficult, more time-consuming, more important. And I think it's very important for the citizens to have good people operating on the city council. And I know it is very hard to make everything fit together to be able to be up here. And I think if there's some modest steps that can be taken for future generations of council members to allow more people to participate in this process, I think it's a good thing to do. And I know there was some disagreement about how we go about this, but I just want to say, I'm really glad that we are sending this out to the voters to vote on. It's the right way to do it. And they're going to tell us what they think about it. I think the ballot language is okay. I'm a little concerned that there will be confusion about some of the points that were brought up here, that we're not necessarily asking for all of these things, or not now, or it may change in the future, or who knows. Anyway, if anybody else agrees, we can hash it out, but I think it's probably okay. But anyway, I think we should move it forward, so glad everybody's continued this discussion, and we will see what the voters think.
Further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that motion does carry unanimously. Thank you, Angie. We'll move on to Dana's written report. Any questions for Dana on her city manager's staff report? Not seeing any. Dana, anything else to report on?
Last week, I'm trying to remember what day it is today. Last week, I presented at the Kalispell, I didn't present, I participated in a panel at the Kalispell Chamber of Commerce's Growth Summit, along with representation from the other cities. So that was a really great opportunity to share my thoughts on housing and transportation and ways that we can work together as 3 cities and the county. As I shared earlier, we will be posting a new job for our housing planner position here soon. We wish Luke the best. He's been fantastic during his time with us, but so we're sad to see him leave, but what a great addition he was, and I'm sure where he is going to will be very happy when he arrives. So that's all I have.
Thanks, Dana. We'll move on to item 8C, which is consideration to authorize the city manager to execute a contract with Communications and Management Services to provide assistance in creating the compensation philosophy and developing and updating the classification system. Dana.
Okay, I'm going to keep this short. I'm assuming you've all read my staff report, or my staff report, Sherry's staff report. She is watching online, but she is getting ready to leave on vacation, so I let her know I'd be happy to handle this for her. As you know, we completed our wage market study. You also, in my manager's report, have the updated version where it has the health insurance benefits included. But the next step in this process is for the city council to set a compensation philosophy and then look at our classification system to have it include market rate as we move forward. So staff is recommending that we move forward with an amendment to the contract with CMS, who prepared our market rate study, so that we can get moving on this project prior to the next fiscal year. The total cost would be $12,200. That would include an on-site visit to help with the compensation philosophy during a work session with council, as well as assist Sherry and Janelle and I in learning how to do the classification system with at least 15 positions so that we can get started there. So with that, if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them, but it is staff's recommendation that the city council authorizes myself to execute a consultant agreement addendum with CMS in an amount not to exceed $12,200.
Thanks, Dana. I would entertain a motion, please. Giuseppe?
Mr. Mayor, I move to authorize the city manager to execute the consultant agreement addendum as discussed, not to exceed $12,200 as discussed today.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Sweeney. Further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that's unanimous as well. Michelle, thanks very much. Dana, and we'll move on to communications from our board. Rebecca, anything this evening?
Yep, I wanted to just bring up parking issues. I had a discussion with Bridger, our chief of police, because during the visioning session at the Grouse Mountain, people were confused about our parking downtown. And so what we talked about was that people are allowed to park for 2 hours on one block, but they can't park on that same block. And so that came up, and then Giuseppe might have just gotten a ticket and keeps bringing up that maybe locals need some. So anyways, I'm just wondering.
I moved my ticket to Mayor's car, so I don't get it.
Okay, there you go. That's one strategy. But I'm just wondering if we should at some point talk about how the parking's working. I know we had the parking study, but there still seems to be some confusion amongst the locals about it. And I know Giuseppe keeps bringing up incentives for locals, and so I just wondered if we could maybe put that on the calendar at some point, or if anybody else thinks it's worth a discussion. We're all too brain dead to proceed. Okay, well, just put it in your thinking caps, and then
I guess, Rebecca, I don't know if Bridger shared with you all of the different steps that we've taken through parking enforcement to educate. We are educating before we are issuing citations. So we've created an, Bridger, I don't know, you want to go into this? Because you showed them all to me, but I'm not going to remember them all, so.
Well, and it appears in the parking garage, some of you received a nice warning from parking enforcement, Potratz. He's doing an outstanding job, and kudos for him, because he's really taken this parking thing seriously, has a extreme wealth of knowledge on the system that we use, and is able to educate the public by handing out on our fancy ticketing paper that is somewhat waterproof, warnings with barcodes that pull up our parking maps, maps of Whitefish, that reference our city ordinances and what a block face is and what reparking is. And to clarify with Rebecca, I did research on how many reparking citations we've written since last year, January 1st till present. 4 tickets, 10 warnings. Not a heavily enforced situation, but the signage is pretty clear downtown what a block face is and what the reparking ordinance is. So some people are just confused, and educating yourself about parking when you go into community is important if you don't want to pay tickets. And I just encourage people to read signs and pay attention to where they're parking, do those type of things. But we're doing as much as we can to educate before we do cite. We issue plenty of citations. We give a lot more warnings, and we educate both for traffic violations and more so for parking violations. But I think it's, my opinion, it's due time to revisit parking, what options are out there with the technology that's out there, and maybe bring it around to current time and what other communities are doing.
So there you go. Bridger wants it done too. All right, thank you. I don't really have anything else. I just wanted to say, and I told these guys that it's so nice when everybody shows up because we have such a fantastic community. It really feels like a lot of camaraderie and love. So thanks for everybody coming.
Thanks, Rebecca. Ben?
First of all, I would say good meeting tonight. Feels like we got some important work done this evening. Craig, I wanted to ask, I know we got behind on road striping during the COVID era, and I'm wondering if you've got any big plans for road striping this year.
Yeah, we'll be kicking off the pavement marking season here in the next week or two. We do have paint in stock. We did have a hard time getting inventory during COVID, but really for the last 2 years, we've tried to get back on top of it. And so, yeah, you'll see a lot more pavement marking happening here earlier in the season than you have in the past.
Looking forward to it.
Anything further, Ben?
Yeah, one other comment. I just wanted to make a brief comment about our hearing earlier with the Legacy Homes program. I would point out that cash in lieu is not the only alternative means of compliance that we allow. And in my experience, it tends to be very difficult for developers and for the city when the guidelines about what needs to be done are unclear or are subject to the whims of the council or anybody else. And I think that it would behoove us, if the interpretation of our existing ordinance is that it is discretionary as to how it's complied with, I would very strongly recommend that we should revisit that and clarify for everybody's sake how this program should be complied. Because I was at the planning board and we're trying to talk about, well, do we need the money or not, and what's our budget for housing? And I mean, there's just no way to answer that stuff in that setting. So I think it should be clear in the ordinance. And so if we think it is currently discretionary, I think we should revisit it.
And I think part and parcel to that is the cash in lieu amount and how that's calculated. Because it seems that folks are electing the cash in lieu route versus building the units for clear reasons. So, my opinion. Yep. Frank, thanks, Ben.
I would concur with both of your decisions, and I hope we'll get something from staff or have a discussion about it in the near term rather than the long term. So I think that's a good thing. Couple of things. The only.
Oh, I was just to say, we can work on scheduling a work session, but we're pushed out to late July already. So, but we can do something like that, because I think a work session would be better, so that we can talk about it. You know, it's voluntary, so you can't make it so restrictive that people don't want to use the program. So I think there's a lot that we can bring to that work session.
Yeah, that would be great. Couple of things. I'm with Rebecca. I was encouraged to see a full house for a very good reason this evening, and I couldn't encourage them more and us more based on their testimony to pursue this with all vigor that we can. And I know that we've been working at it as hard as we can, but know that at least this councilman will do anything I can do to assist you. And I think we can recruit any one of those people to come help us get this thing done and bring whatever pressure we need to bring to bear to get it accepted and get it done. So that was the thing that just struck me again this evening, but it's again how important these things are to our community, and the fact that we have unreasonable hurdles that we've been dealing with, I find objectionable from this community's perspective. And I hope that message gets heard by our friends at FWP, and that, no, this is really serious stuff, and it's a fairness issue. And so I really want us to pursue that, and I really hope that they take this to heart as well as we do. Thanks. Yeah.
Thank you, Frank.
Yeah.
Steve?
Angie just said it.
Sorry, Andrew.
So one thing that didn't come up during that hearing, I should probably let you guys know, I did have a conversation with counsel for FWP, and it went really well. They seemed receptive. I gave them the history of what we're dealing with. We're providing the evidence that we really do have an easement. So it was actually a really good conversation. I kind of expected it to be a non-starter because last time when we submitted a 124, they basically said we won't even deal with this because you don't have the property owner's signature. But their legal counsel, he seemed receptive. So there's that.
Good. Steve?
Thank you. I just have a question. I'm seeing the big binder with our proposed budget in it, and knowing at least kind of with my ear to the ground that we're looking at potential tax increases this year due to a number of reasons. I wonder where we are in the process of kind of discussing how how we do our tax rebate to people who live here full-time versus people who don't. If we've had a chance to investigate that and come up with some solutions for that.
So we'll have to get that on a work session. Again, we're a ways out. That process would have to go through a vote for resort tax. So, that will take time. So it's not going to be effective for fiscal year 25. That's not possible. So we will get a work session scheduled this summer to discuss that further. But I am hearing word that the property tax committee, the governor's committee, they're looking at that. They've heard, I think, how they're taxing second homes versus residents. And so that could definitely also help, and that will be the next legislative session. So that starts in January. So we might see some traction there too. That would make it easier.
Well, is there anything? I mean, is there anything in the current language with our resort tax that says that we have to give the money back equally to everyone, or is it just say we give 5% back to taxpayers?
So we give 25. It's a 25%
25%
property tax relief, and because it doesn't specify, property tax relief as defined in the state law is to property taxes. So you would have to put it on all tax bills regardless. And right now the state does not tax differently, second homeowners or residents differently. So it would have to go through a vote. The 5% we would recommend stays. 5 of the 25% we would recommend to stay to meet that statutory requirement, and so you have 20% that you could look at handling differently. I did reach out I was talking to Senator Hertz actually, because they're talking about local option sales tax and whatnot in that committee. And when I asked about the state's refund process for property tax relief, you simply filled out the form and they don't have a means of confirming it. They aren't really confirming to anything, so anybody could have probably submitted and gotten it. So he assumes there could be fraud, but that they'd be working to watch for that. So they don't necessarily have a great system, I think, in that aspect. It just sets you up for risk. IRS always has fraud. So when you have any type of property tax relief or something like that, you'd have to have a good controls in place. The definition of what a resident is versus non-resident really could be, up to discretion. So I think it definitely needs a full work session, and then we would go to voters.
Okay, I've said this before, and I'm animate about it. We would not be the first. We're not landing on the moon here. Other states do it all the time. There's got to be models that we can copy for this, and it has to happen before we start raising taxes on everybody while we're still giving millions back to people who don't even live here full time. It's just unfair. And it's unfortunate that I don't necessarily agree that well, I don't know, to be honest, but it doesn't seem to me like we would have to, as long as we're giving 25% back, that we have to give it back evenly. I just don't understand, I don't see that as having to be, that we'd have to toe that line. So anyway, you know my thoughts about it. I don't think that we have to reinvent the wheel on how to go about this, and I think we need to make it happen, because people like me are suffering from constantly raising taxes, inflation, and all of the other things that are making it unlivable here are just, it's hollowing out our town. And we have to pay attention to that, especially when we look at our budget. With that, on a happier note, the graduation is coming up, and they have this thing called Safe Grad Night, where all seniors get to go to the Wave for the evening, and there is a whole committee of parents that organize this every year, and they raise $50,000 through the sale of lottery tickets. And I don't know if Bridger has sold any tickets. You want to buy one?
He put a ticket on my car.
Anyway, the tickets are $100 each, but you have a chance at, and then there's a split the pot. You have a 1 in 500 chance of winning, or how many ever tickets you buy, but you have a 1 in 500 chance of winning $25,000. So if you would like to buy a ticket, of course, dumb me, I didn't bring mine with me, but there is a Venmo account you can go to and buy your ticket, and you'll be entered in the raffle and those kind of things. And it goes to benefit our seniors. They go in at about 10 o'clock at night. They stay till about 3 in the morning, just so they're not out on the streets, out partying, doing stuff that they shouldn't be doing on grad night. And it's a really cool thing. They give away tons of prizes. Every kid walks out with a $100 bill in their pocket, plus all kinds of raffle gifts. Everybody wins at least one raffle at the Safe Grad Night as well. So you'd be going to support that if you want to buy a ticket. They are $100, which is kind of pricey, but I will have some, and I'll probably accost you in 2 weeks one more time to see if you would like to buy one.
Thanks, Steve. Giuseppe?
Yes, and that's a worthy cause. They're going to get drunk with sugar. I've been there a few years doing that volunteer program. 4 points. Try to be fast. This Sunday, Happy Mother's Day. You guys suffered the most when we come to this world, so thank you, mothers. Then, May 18, Run the Fish. I invite everybody to run at least a 5K, just to show example and leadership, since we all jump into the frozen lake in January. I'm being funny. And then being a little bit more serious, I fully agree with Ben about revisiting the rules of engagements for cash in lieu versus affordable units. I think clarity upfront makes the process much easier for the developer and for whoever, Community Development Board and City Council, has to evaluate a particular project. And lastly, but not leastly, we keep talking about budget increasing, cost increasing. The only way you make a budget work is you have the same amount of profit versus revenue versus the cost. The costs are going to go up. The revenue comes from grants or taxpayers. But guess what? Now we have Rebecca Norton that is thinking about parking fees. Maybe Ben is on the fence. I'm going to push again and suggest that if we don't want to do a full work session to construct a parking fee structure, how about offline we look at collecting data for this summer, not charging, not changing anything. I know that those QRC codes that you just showed and the technology will allow, with little effort, I hope, by the end of summer, to come back to us and say, you know, we had this many out-of-state plates that parked within the 2 or 3 hours signed slots. And then once we find out that we had 500,000 of them, we can decide if we want to charge them $1 an hour and bring $1.5 million on 3 hours average into the coffers of our city, not penalizing the residents. So I just ask that we consider a work session to that effect.
Thank you, Giuseppe. I have nothing more to add other than I agree with everyone's comments tonight. And a big happy birthday to Jake Cook, our wizard behind the scenes, although he's excused tonight. I don't know what he's doing, can only guess. But happy birthday to Jake. And on that note, we are adjourned. Thanks.